ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has filled His book with all of those things that human beings need to succeed. And of course, with children being one of the great bounties of life and also one of the great responsibilities, Allah Azza wa Jal has given us those instructions as to what should be the pattern of raising our children, what should be the template of ta'aleem, of education and tarbiyah of the child. So in Surah Luqman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the advice of a pious slave of his who was not a prophet, but he was someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had endowed with great wisdom. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions His wisdom in the Quran. And after mentioning His wisdom, He talks about what He advised His son to do. Now, the sequence of what Luqman is telling his son is the exact same sequence that we need to follow. It should be the foundation, the blueprint for the way we raise our children. The first and most important lesson is Ya bunayya la tushrik billah. And this sentence, this advice encompasses the entire system of beliefs within Islam, because the system of beliefs within Islam is based on tawheed. So the first lesson that is to be given to the child from as young as possible. There is no waiting till the child becomes mature and becomes one who understands things, is finished playing, and then we start teaching them these things. This is instilled into the child from birth. The kalima of tawheed and the words of tawheed, the words of pronouncing the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and directing the attention of the child to Allah in all their conditions of need, want and trouble. When the child is hungry, then taking the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide. When the child is sick, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to get you better. When the child needs something, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide it for you, because Allah is the provider. He is the one who cures. He is the one who feeds. He is the one who does everything. Our life and death are only and only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. This lesson must be instilled into the child right from the beginning. And when this happens, the child will start developing their own connection, their own bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is extremely important. And that bond, that link that is created between a child and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the single most precious thing that we can give to that child. There is nothing more precious than this. And if that bond is missing, then none of the treasures of the world can possibly replace it. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intervenes in this conversation that Luqman is having with his son. In this education that's taking place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, look, Luqman did not need to tell him that, oh son, be obedient to your parents. Allah says, I told insan to be kind to his parents. There is a very big message here. When we will connect our children to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they will look towards what Allah wants them to do. And they will realize that the first haqq Allah has placed on them is the haqq of their parents. And then in detail Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains what the parents have done for them, what sacrifices the mother has given just to bear that child. The child that is connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have the azama, the grandeur of the parents in his or her heart. And the child that has not been connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will for some time have the importance of the parents. Here's what normally happens. We feed the children with messages of how important we are. I'm going to do this for you. Baba's going to do this for you. Mama's going to do this for you. I'm going to do this. I'll get you this. I'll do this. I'll fix this. I'll take care of that. I will. And the whole time, the messaging being given to the children is, we are everything for you. We are your everything. We provide, we look after, we do and we do and we do and we do. And for a while that message stays firmly fixed in the head of the child until the child sees us having to work. And they realize that we are not their providers, we're actually going somewhere else to get provisions for them. And that we are also dependent on something else and someone else. And that we also get sick, and it is not our parents that are looking after us, it's something else that we're doing to get better. And that when we are in need, we are not the solvers of our own problems. And it doesn't take long for the child to pick that up. And then what do? To make us happy, they will show appreciation when they have to, when they feel compelled to. And when they do not feel compelled to, they will exploit that situation. Because they know that this is all lip service. My parents are not actually my providers. They're not actually the ones that cure me and heal me. They're not actually any of that. But the thing is, I need them right now. If I want that gift on Eid, I'm going to have to make them happy. If I want them to do this for me, then I'm going to have to do this. If I want to get this out of them, I'm going to have to treat them in a certain way. So it becomes a transaction. Children are extremely intuitive, extremely smart in these things. And very early they realize that this messaging is for our advantage. This messaging that we are giving them, this impression of our importance that we are doing, it's for our need to be able to control them and manage them. And then as a child gets older and learns to do things on their own, starting with the small things, the child learns to dress themselves, to eat by themselves. They learn to fall asleep by themselves. And then they learn that their parents aren't the only friends in the world. They can actually go and make friends with other people. They can interact with other people. And as they mature, those independencies grow. They become more and more and more independent until the time comes when the child is able to stand on their own feet, maybe even earn a little bit and provide some things for themselves. And they'll say, oh, well, I don't even need my parents for this anymore. And the independence grows with age. And a time will come when the children will say, I don't need them for anything. What are my parents doing for me? I'm earning for myself. I'm looking after myself. I'm doing everything myself. I don't really need them for anything. And that will probably be one of the most heartbreaking moments in the life of a parent. When the child basically tells them, directly or indirectly, that I don't really need you anymore. And what that means is, I don't have to look after you, or I don't have to respect you because you don't do anything for me. And this becomes now a purely kind of like a business deal. If you will do this for me, then I'll do this for you, otherwise no. And children go off and live on their own, and the time comes when they will only pay attention to their parents once or twice a year. The reason for this is because the parents worked backwards. They thought that because we're caring for this child, the most important thing for this child to know is that we are everything. Had we introduced this child to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and connected them to Allah at every step, turning the child's attention to Allah, then they would realize that all of us in their lives and all the things in their lives are just asbab, and their parents are also just asbab. Allah is musabbibul asbab. He creates the asbab, He makes them, He breaks them, He uses them to do whatever He wants. Sickness and health and wealth and poverty and everything else is in His control. We need to turn to Him. And when His greatness settles into the heart, then it cannot be that Allah has ordered them to do something and they disobey that command. And they will obey their parents, be kind to their parents in the way that the Quran is laying out, only if they recognize who Allah is. Otherwise they will not. So this sequence needs to be corrected first. And if we've started off on the wrong foot, it's still not too late to correct it. It's not something wrong to say, look, we are not your providers. We are not your raziq. We are not your protectors. We are not your hafiz. We are not any of those things. Allah uses us to do certain things for you. Allah is the protector and the provider and the doer. And then their obedience to us will come naturally. It will be a natural requirement of this belief to be obedient and kind to their parents the way Allah wants them to. And then, once the azamah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is settled, and the parent and the children become aware of the fact that this life is a life of responsibility, it's not a life of just getting what you want, then the lesson of taqwa needs to be taught. And Luqman taught his son the lesson of taqwa in this way, that Ya bunayya innaha in taku mithqala habbatin min khardalin fatakun fi sakhratin aw fi samawati aw fil ardi ya'ti biha Allah. Oh my son, any deed that you do, you may be able to conceal it from me. Sometimes I will be watching you, some other times I will not be watching you, but any deed that you do, no matter how much you conceal it, how secretly you do it, and look at the examples. You take it and you commit that deed somewhere deep inside a mountain. Or you take your deed and you go hide it inside a mountain. Or you were to ascend into the skies and hide it on a star somewhere. Or you were to take that deed and bury it deep into the ground. In other words, you do a deed in a way that there is no possibility that anyone knows about it. Ya'ti biha Allah. Allah is going to take that deed and bring it in front of you, show it to you on the Day of Judgment. You can escape from the eyes of people, but you cannot escape from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So building the awareness and the sense of duty and accountability to Allah. Getting them to self-regulate their own behavior, that Allah is watching me. I don't need the supervision of my parents because Allah knows what I'm doing anyways. All of this is being documented by the angels. All of this is going to be shown to me. My parents being there or not being there, it should not affect me. So the lesson of taqwa. And when taqwa comes in, the duties to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aqim as-salah. Salat. Salat is something that can be taught to a child who's only 2 years old. Just by modeling salat. Anyone who prays in their home will know that children at a very young age, from the time, even sometimes by the time the children start crawling, they'll come to you when they're praying and they'll start copying you and imitating you. By the time they're walking, they're actively coming and hanging around you and praying salat with you. What is this? This is ta'aleem of salat without teaching them anything verbally. When we demonstrate salat, when we establish salat in our homes, as is the haqq of salat, the child will realize that no matter what's going on, salat is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what activity is going on. And when we become negligent, that something is on, okay, let's just watch it, let's finish this and then we'll pray. Such and such thing is happening in the kitchen, let's just wrap that up and then we'll pray. We have to go somewhere, let's do that and then we'll come back and pray. When there is no ihtimam, when there is no punctuality or diligence in salat, it doesn't matter what you tell the child. It doesn't matter what you say with your tongue. The only thing they're picking up is what is happening around them. So this instruction is given by a parent who himself is establishing salat. And conveying to the child that, look, you are responsible for what kind of environment you stay in. You are responsible for that environment. Just because people, what a beautiful nuskha, what a beautiful prescription for saving children from peer pressure and saving them from falling into the traps and the pitfalls of bad friends. Make them a da'i right from the beginning. وَأْمُرْ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَانْهَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. Teach the child from day one that wherever they go, they have to spread khair. Wherever they go, when they're amongst their friends, they have to establish salat. When something wrong is going on, they are collectively responsible, and if all of them are not taking responsibility, then at least your child is responsible for stopping people from doing wrong. And this environment, this tarbiyah happens in the home first. Are our children reminding us to do good things? Are our children reminding us when we step out of line? We need to create that environment in our own homes. Are the siblings instructing each other, pushing each other towards good and stopping each other from evil or not? If they're doing it in the house, there's a good chance they will be able to do it outside. If it's not happening in the home, you should not expect that it's going to happen by some miracle outside. So the environment of da'wat is also created in the house, where children are given responsibility of working on other people, other family members. And what does this do? This makes them resilient against all of the pressures of the society, of the community. This has to be done at a young age. وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا أَصَابَكَ. Life is not a bowl of cherries, as they say. Difficulties do come. Teaching the child the sabaq, the lesson of sabr. And how will we do that? When we do sabr ourselves. If we lose our cool all the time in the house and we're preaching sabr to our children, it's not really going to happen. So maintaining our own composure when hardships come and children see that my father or my mother is going through this affliction, this illness, but they're not complaining. They're doing it. They're bearing with it. They're struggling, but they're not complaining. They're not losing hope. They're not losing composure. Then when the child is in that same position, we can coach them into a position of sabr. So the lesson of sabr is taught. And if this lesson is not taught, then the child grows up with a sense of entitlement, that they're entitled to everything and nothing should ever go against their temperament. Nothing should ever be against their desires. Nothing should be against their wishes. But this person will always be miserable in life. Somebody who always wants to have what they want to have and expects it from life is going to be disappointed. At every step of life, they're going to be disappointed. إِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. These are big things. These are big achievements. These are difficult things to achieve. And then the ta'aleem of akhlaq. The ta'aleem of akhlaq. Don't have a face where you're frowning at people, or you're scowling at people, or you're looking down. You're making a face that shows that you don't have an appreciation or respect for the people around you. Don't keep a face like that. A face that shows disdain, that shows disrespect, that shows that you're very haughty, you're very high up, and you're too good for everyone. Don't have a face. If the person's face shows it, when a person feels that they're too good for the world, they're too good for their friends, they're too good for those people. Oh no, I don't hang around with those kids because those are such and such and such and such, and using derogatory statements. So don't skew up your face for people, and don't walk around arrogantly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like people with that conceited and arrogant attitude. And subhanallah, your voice level. Lower your voice. Walk in a pace that is moderate. وَقْصِدْ فِي مَشْيِكَ. Walk, what does it mean, walk with a moderate pace? Sometimes you see people, Youngsters walking around with their arms flailing right to left, and you wonder, really, is there something to Darwin's theory? Because this person is not walking like a Homo sapien, he's walking like something else. No. Walk with moderation. The walk of a Muslim is a walk of decency. When a Muslim is walking, they're not kicking things around and causing disruption and all over the place. The walk of decency, the walk of modesty and humility. How did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to walk? How did he used to walk? So, teaching our children even the fine points of life. We fool ourselves by saying, they're just children, they're just children, they're just children. It's not about preaching to them, it's about teaching them, coaching them, mentoring them, and giving them the importance of this, that this is also an important thing. Tomorrow you will be walking, and people will be looking at you, and right away they will form an opinion about you by the way you walk. And your voice level. وَغْضُضْ مِنْ صَوْتِكَ. You have kids that are standing next to each other yelling their heads off, as if they're standing across a field from each other. Learn to control the volume of your voice. You pick up your voice according to your audience, and you don't make unnecessary noises. When there's calm and peace and people are trying to rest, then you will respect that by not using a voice that's going to disrupt them. And when people want to listen, you're not going to whisper because it's going to cause them difficulty. You will adjust your voice level to your audience. And when you speak to someone who is older than you, somebody who is in a higher rank or higher position, then your voice, your tone of voice will reflect that. So many subtleties in our deen, so many fine things, so much etiquette, so much emphasis on mannerisms, so many beautiful things. And then look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that what is there that doesn't have any regard for the people around it and just makes noise? Inna ankara al-aswati la sawtul hamir. Those are donkeys that bray just out of the blue. It'll start braying, and it doesn't care what's happening at that time, whether the muaddin is calling his adhan, or it's standing in a marketplace, or somebody is doing tilawat of Quran, or everyone is sleeping, or what is going on. It doesn't care. It's just braying. It's making that noise. And Allah says this is the worst of noises, the noise that has no consideration for anyone, and it doesn't make any sense. So the ta'aleem of aqaid, of beliefs, and imaniyat, iman and yaqeen. The ta'aleem of taqwa, the ta'aleem of akhlaq. All of this, we know this in the backs of our minds, but Surah Luqman brings it out in such a beautiful, in such a clear way. This is the blueprint for tarbiyah of our children. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to follow this sequence and incorporate all of these things into our homes. These children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them so special and so talented and so gifted, and they are able to achieve so many things. It's just that little bit of attention and coaching and that constant tarbiyah that is needed in the early phases. And then you will watch their talents, their beauties, and their powers will start becoming visible, and they will become beneficial, inshaAllah, for themselves and for the whole ummah, inshaAllah. And we are in need of such children. We are in need of such generations that will take this deen, bring it into their lives, demonstrate it, and spread it around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our children, protect their iman and their akhlaq, and grant them beneficial knowledge and pious actions. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.